Welcome and hello and welcome. Welcome and hello and welcome. I hope everyone had just an extremely Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, whatever you happen to celebrate. Hope it was, safe, happy. You got some good stuff from Santa. And, if you're like me, you're a working stiff, you schlub, you're back to work today, just slaving away in the office. But hopefully you stuffed your face with some delicious food and the family and friends were making merriment. And you maybe enjoyed some football, maybe you enjoyed some time off, maybe you just, let's see, I want to make sure I wasn't on mute. Whatever you did, hope it was a great holiday, guys. It is Un Poco Mas, the show where we give you just a little bit more. I'm back to work, and I know I made a lot of fun of this, Bitmine immersion stock. When it was, basically everybody started hyping it. It was $60, and I can't blame them because kind of when the snowball starts rolling downhill and everybody's talking about a certain stock or crypto or coin or whatever it is, you got to kind of chase that thing, chase the dragon, tail wagging the pog, if you will. You guys remember pogs? Anybody collect pogs? Garbage pail kids, anything like that? Um, so guys, I guess my thing with this was I didn't really love it at 60, but I find myself liking it quite a bit at 28. And I guess one of the things that sort of you know brought me on board, if you will, is the fact that SoFi basically, with their stable coin is putting it on the Ethereum blockchain. And I started reading about a lot more about Ethereum and about blockchain in general. Um, let's see, guys, gonna double check. Um, anyway, sorry guys, bunch of work stuff backed up. Year end, you know how that goes. Everybody wants answers, and of course, I'm just a fat doofus, so I don't have any. But anyway, yeah, it could. That's a very good point. It could go to 60. It could go to 13. It could go anywhere. It's really it's really a black box. I mean, what though is that if SoFi makes that choice, they're making that choice for a reason, and they're the first bank to offer this. They're not going to be the last. A lot of crypto oriented companies are applying for bank charters, and you just see this administration moving quite rapidly in that direction. But if you look at the sort of AI case from Google, and I've looked at others as sort of key reasons for SoFi using Ethereum, established ecosystem, transparency and efficiency, future expansion, regulatory alignment, internal and external. It just seems to be that if SoFi is going to use Ethereum, a lot of the people that, a lot of the companies that go the trail that SoFi is blazing are also going to use Ethereum for the same reasons. And those real world use cases where, you know, real companies are making money off of that, off of Ethereum, it's just going to kind of buoy it because of the huge sort of knock people like Warren Buffett and strongman and other financial titans have bandied about is that this is just essentially a useless asset. It's just something that's being pumped up on hype, and there's no real world utility to it. But the fact is that's not really true. It's just they were early and they didn't understand it, and I don't still don't understand it, but I'm willing to just buy it because I think it's going to, on a technical basis, I think it's going to go up. I think it's a coiled spring because I think a lot of retail was loading into the stock at 60, and there's a lot of reasons why I think this thing's going to go up. Shorts are bailing out as fast as they can. I think institutions are buying at these levels. Just in the short term, we're making higher lows, and it's basically had a triple bottom here in the short term. I see higher highs over the longer and midterm. I see a midterm uptrend in the lows. So I just think the sellers are really exhausted on this thing in the high 20s. And I think the retail and institutional, quite frankly, appetite for Ethereum is expanding every day. I think the retail appetite for crypto and all these types of assets has been there, but obviously like a company like Bank of America just recently came out and advised, like through Merrill, that hey, we're advising our clients that they could actually hold part of their, part of their portfolio in crypto. And this is the first time some of these more conservative investment houses have started doing this, but you have to wake up to the reality that, crypto is not going away. It's not worthless. People put a value on it for a reason. And, let's face it, the value of any asset is just based on supply and demand and what people will pay. And as long as people will pay for crypto, then it has a value. Whether it has utility, I think that varies on a case-by-case basis. But I think over time, it's going to be proven out that Ethereum has a lot more utility than some of the others. A lot of people say that about XRP. I'm just studying XRP. I'm not a huge crypto guy. I'm a meat and potatoes guy. I'm how does this company make money? What does it do? If I can't understand it, it's very difficult for me to invest in it. Sometimes I'll just jump on the hype train and try to make a quick trade, quick buck, throw a few calls in there. But I try to avoid that. I try to avoid chasing hype because you usually get caught at the top. If you throw logic out the window and start chasing hype, that's why, whenever I see this huge run, I just wait. I'm like, I'm not going to chase that. Maybe like Palantir, it just runs away from me and I miss it and I regret it for the rest of my life and I beat myself up forever. But maybe like most all other things that have a huge meteoric, shooting star run, it crashes back down to earth. And this is obviously not the Bitmine Immersion chart. This is the Ethereum chart, but you see what an important pivot this is and how the Ethereum is finding support here, coming off 26 just a month ago, then 27, making a slightly higher low again and a slightly higher low again here. So it's making four, slightly higher lows after lower lows, lower lows, lower lows, over and over again. So this is a little bit subtle, but I really think overall, even though this crazy, expanding, sea monster pattern is here, whatever you want to call it, the big spooky ghost times 3 from Scooby-Doo, the Matterhorn pattern, I don't care what you call it, but the bottom line is, I think longer term, Ethereum, like most crypto, is still in an uptrend. And if you start to look at whenever it dances with this line, it likes to move up. I mean, it dances with the line here, moves up, here again, moves up, crashes all the way back down, and is resistance there, but then again, moves all the way up, dances with the line here. That's the only time it sort of finds resistance and then crashes back down. This is all the way down to 1400 just 8 months ago, and then massive move back up again. Line is resistance again, moves back up through. You can't glean really too much from this chart because there's obviously, a lot of algorithms working really hard. This isn't like a super, organic chart, but so few are anymore. It's like, really how much of the market is organic and how much of the market is just algos having a sword fight, basically touching tips. Algos do love to touch tips. Let's be interesting to see if there's some more divergence next year between metals and crypto. Yeah, I think that, that correlation is kind of a thing of the past. I mean, it's slipping. These assets are becoming, their own class. And it's like, I feel like it's a different generation, a different investor investing in precious metals versus investing in crypto. I'm sure there's some overlap, but I think it's just the distinct nature of the investor is creating, unique behavior, I think, in the price action and how these things react to, macro and world events and different stuff. Obviously, oil and precious metals used to be a big correlation. That kind of started deviating a few years ago. But anyway, yeah, great question. What's up, Baltimore? What's going on? How you doing? Big pink wave to you, my friend. Let's see. Does things with computers. How you doing? Tortuga de Rio. Welcome, Tortuga. I think you were here before. You probably left. You probably have too much common sense. But anyway, so people all say like, hey, what do you do? What are you buying? What are you doing? And so I'm just trying to say like, all I was doing today was buying this thing. And I've heard a lot of people say this is just a falling knife, and obviously you can see that on the resistance here, to the upside. Now the highs, yes, are coming down, but the lows are not. The lows are maintaining along this horizontal line basically since the meteoric pump up over 100 and, equally meteoric dump back down to the 60 area. Um, Now, what's interesting here is this has actually come down. And if you kind of zoom in on this, it's not really what it seems like, because it tested here, I think, you know, it's fair to say twice. I mean, it comes back down here, pumps all the way up to 35, and then comes back down to 28. So, that's like I don't know, not a 20%, approximately a 20% fall. And then it pumps all the way back up to 42, comes back to this line again, pumps to 32, comes back to this line again. So this is, it just depends how you count them. But if you're being fairly conservative, one, two, three, four tests of this line. Now, logically, based on what you're seeing, are there sellers below 28 for this? I mean, a lot of people say it's trading at less than its intrinsic value based on the Ethereum that it owns. And then there's this 5% alchemy everybody's talking about. They're, getting closer and closer to that, buying the dips. There's just a lot of things I look for that are coming together on this one. It's not just the fact that it just, it's forming a really nice wedge. I think institutions are loading, and they're just basically, I say this over and over again. I say, if you look at the chart, why do they want to bang a stock off of the exact same low over and over again? You notice that the high keeps changing. Whether it go up or down, the high keeps changing, but the algo likes the same. Do you think it's because they want to sell at that low, or because they want to buy and accumulate at that low, and they want you, retail, tiny wing herd of sheep, to sell at that low? Just, use logic on it. But you see this coming off. So I guess you could argue that if you draw a line here, that this would be more of a downward channel than a, descending wedge, bull flag. There's so many things you can call this, but I just look at it. I try to look at the chart more in terms of what's actually happening. They're bringing the high down because there's less and less retail willing to chase these runs, because look at how many times it tests this line. Look at how many pumps. I mean, of course, there's this huge pump here, but just aside from that, it's one test, two, three. It rides along under this resistance line here. Four comes back off. I won't count that because it doesn't really go up, but five. And then this is almost six because the wedge is getting so tight. I mean, I think this is going to go way, way back up, and they're going to do another big pump. But whether you want to play it for a trade, a swing trade, play some calls, whether you want to own this thing, whether you believe in Ethereum long term, I just think it's going to see a huge burst of momentum to the upside, and I want a piece of that. So I'm going to try to play that a few ways, long and short term, as best I can. Probably foolhardy, but what do you see in the short? Okay, the short was kind of running the same range, topping out at 11 to 12%, then coming back down to 6%. Now, just a month ago, the short was 11.34% of the free float. Today, it stands at 6.6% of the free float. So that's obviously quite a massive reduction. And then you look at today, they returned 2.2 million shares, or over 7% of the short. So you combine this information, you combine these data points, you look at the chart, shorts are getting out as fast as they can at these levels. So do you expect those same market makers to continue to push down? Why would they? The behavior doesn't, necessarily add up. And then you look at, insider sentiment score, 86, officer sentiment score. The insiders, they're actually, have bought and not sold. I know people were basically freaking out over, the authorized share count went up some absurd amount. That's very common, especially with young companies, that they'll put a huge share authorization there just so they'll have more shares authorized than they could ever possibly use. But I think people on YouTube were just reading way too much into that. Like, Tom Lee lied. Everybody lied to us. Grow up. It is what it is. But insider ownership is relatively low, but institutional ownership, I think, has probably climbed a lot. If you look at shorts covering, institutional ownership usually increases hand in hand with that, because a lot of the shorts that were covering, their position from 60 or 50 are then going to flip and go long, because that's how this game works. They push it down and then they run it up. Like, it's not like they just get off the elevator at the bottom and they don't want to ride it back up to the top. This is what market makers do. They'll take your money on both sides, but they want you to, take the ride from 130 and sell at 28, or buy at 60 and sell at 28, or buy at 45 and sell at 28, or buy at 35 and sell at 28, or buy at 32 and then sell at 28. They don't care where your happy ass bought the stock. They just want you to dump it at 28. That's why they keep, bang a gong, get it on off of that level. They don't hit the same low over and over and over again, months and months and months apart, because they want to sell there. The people who control the price don't want to sell at the very low of the range, believe it or not. Mr. Ripley. How's the peeping, Tom? That was a great Philip Seymour Hoffman performance, a talented Mr. Ripley. Pardon me. Philip Seymour Hoffman is just 10 times the actor of, Matt Damon, or say 100 times the actor of like a Ben Affleck, or 1,000,000 times the actor of a Kevin Costner. I'm fond of you, Sue. I can't take it. I cannot take it. Let's see. Yeah, I did make a 180 on it. I guess my concern was the valuation. The valuation was disconnected the wrong way, between the underlying asset. And I guess I'm not so much sold on Bitminer in terms of the share structure and the governance as I'm sold on Ethereum. And I think Ethereum's going to make a big move to the upside. And I'm not saying I want to own this for the rest of my life. I mean, I might trade it. I might swing it. I'm definitely going to try to play some calls over the next, 60 days, because I think they could be fruitful. They could be quite fruitful, like low-hanging fruits. And if you're approaching the age of 50, you definitely can know what I'm saying on low-hanging fruits. The old, anyway, I won't go there. Yeah, I know I made a 180, but I have to tell you, what is that? Laboa. One of the things I do is always sort of challenge my own assumptions and my own bias. And I also try to not fall in love with things and go by, a relative valuation. So something that I might not have liked at 60, I might like at 28, because it's less than half the price. And rather than being out of whack with the, intrinsic value being way less than what the share price reflects, now the intrinsic value is kind of the same or even below what the share price reflects. And I think the crazy outcry over dilution and stuff is just, this stuff hasn't happened yet. But what worries me is the lack of insider ownership in terms of skin in the game. And then, what encourages me is the fact that I think the right institutions are jumping on board, but there's so many. This is why I think this is going to be one of those project stocks like SoFi, where market makers just make it a special project and just screw with it for a while, pushing it up and down, at their whim, because a lot of the biggest shareholders have, different short long plays on the stock. Like Susquehanna, biggest share, they have 10 million shares put from 50, and then they also have 7.5 million long shares, and then I assume they also have 3 million calls. So you kind of add that up. Morgan Fudley in at 10 million shares. ARK, of course, in 7 million shares. Citadel has a play on the stock, short and long, sort of a neutral play, probably 6 million shares there. Jane Street, interestingly, looks like more of a sort of a neutral position, because they have the 8 million shares on the put. They have 6 million shares on the call, and then they have 3 million shares that they just don't long. Citadel, again, with a long position, so you like to see that. Vanguard in the stock, Wolverine in the stock, Geode in the stock. So Even JP Morgan, JP Morgan last filing just a month ago, they own 2 million shares. So Charles Schwab, I mean, these are very conservative, investment houses, in addition to some of the more cutting edge, sort of new age type people, the incense people over at ARC and places like that are more on the cutting edge. But everybody's buying this thing. You see BlackRock in for 3.5 million, and the longs were buying this thing. Obviously, I don't think this is exactly accurate at 50.41. So sometimes they get stuck. Like that's the price at the beginning of the quarter. I don't know. These filings get a little bit iffy. Let's see. Fiserv looks extremely undervalued, just like a McDouble. Interesting. Yeah, I've actually been hearing about that stock. And I know that it's like, yeah, who was talking about? Somebody was talking about Fiserv down in the comments a couple weeks ago, I think, because I was taking a look at that stock, but I can't remember who was pushing the thing. But I think you're going to see this is the flip. Like, you see this a lot. There's multiple pumps. They keep pushing and pushing the stock way down, bang it off the lows. For SoFi, it was like 425, 450. They kept taking it back to that area over and over, and then it was like into the fives over and over. It's just a war of attrition. They want to wear you down and get you saying dead stock and get you saying, they want you to resign yourself mentally to a place where you'll just take a huge loss because you just feel hopeless. And you're just going to say, hey, this has no hope of recovery, so I'm just going to take what I can get. And right when people tend to give up like that, that's when market makers will own more and more of the shares. And that's where they were, obviously run the stock up, get you to buy at the top again, rinse and repeat. And that's how they make so much money on this huge fake volatility. Like, does this necessarily look like organic volatility, or does this look like you can even see the levels come in? I mean, or does this look like, 25 here, 3 here? I mean, these big round numbers too can really mess, I think, with retail psychology. Like, market makers don't care if it's 29, 26 or 3,000 on the dot, but that sort of fake war at those levels will often entice retail to believe the stock's going to make a move, one way or the other. 465 on the daily. Well, I think, yeah, if you think it's going to go to 465, $4.65. Where's that gap? This one? I can't tell where you're talking about. When was it? Well, all the way back down there. Down here, huh? Yeah, I could fill that gap. I think it was what? He's talking about this gap down here, I guess. Right, cheer. 460. Yeah, I mean, obviously, if it goes down to the fours, I'm a strong buy. That'll be quite a haircut for those that were buying heavily at 61. All the big smart money. RXRX, no, I haven't. JKO up too. Bailey B, but Bitminer has a huge. Oh yeah, I already said that. I mean, there's gaps and then there's gaps, but you could say, oh, it has a huge gap to fill here, has a gaps to fill, here. I don't know. I don't really read too much into that gap between there, because I think sometimes you have to kind of leave the past behind and not hold on to the gap. Just let it go. Think, okay, the stock's not going back to 4. It's like, I'm sure, like, if you look at Palantir, there might be a gap between like 8 and 9, or 14 and 18, whatever it might be. Say, oh, it ain't gonna happen. Some gaps remain unfilled. Know what I mean? Get thee to a nunnery. Anyway. Yeah, that would mean Ethereum would go down to like 520. Yeah, if you look at that, and you just have to look at the chart and see, like, Ethereum, came off in April 14. It's been making higher highs. If you kind of, go back, I think the likelihood of Ethereum, coming back down to what would be, I don't know, this level, this little where it found support way back here. I find that highly unlikely. Look at the volume. Like, it's just not going to happen. So yeah, that gap's not going to fill. This whole discussion is idiotic, but I'm willing to entertain it. Anyway, guys, like I said, this was just more, this wasn't so much an axe to grind or anything because I don't really care, but I'm just telling you, I know I made fun of this thing like an idiot and, you know, now I'm buying it. So I just want to be honest about that. I did have a change of heart. I started studying, a little bit more about what the future of Ethereum could look like if there's wide adoption. I think it could be one of the big winners in crypto, quite frankly. In which case, obviously, I think BMNR would be a big winner. But if you guys read Seeking Alpha like I do, some of these guys, this Bitmine Immersion, the Ethereum Treasury play trading below book value, that's a good article today. I read that one. Strong buy by Thomas Carroll, Bitmine Immersion Technologies. Time to start paying attention. You guys know Giannis Zampanos, Bitmine Immersion, a supplies shock in slow motion. And then you have Okoff, who we read a lot. Bitmine Immersion is an ideal non-AI hyper growth pick. We have Stone Fox Capital, who we read all the time. Bitmine Immersion, major test pass so far. And then 3 reasons why Bitmine will follow Ethereum's rally. Well, Dimitro Libid, Ethereum's rally hasn't really taken off yet. This is one that I'd be really, obviously I'm a huge fan of Big Sexy, Stephen Fiorio. Bitmine Immersion, a high octane vehicle for Ethereum believers that will benefit from staking. And I read this one too. I'm not going to go through these articles with you because you can read them yourself. But Steve is not somebody to just throw his money into junk, and he studies these things. He understands, finance, and I think the future of this stuff a lot better than most of us could ever hope to. So despite a recent crypto vitality of 50% share drop, I remain bullish on Bitminer. Dollar cost averaging views a leverage play on Ethereum's future. Excellent article, as are all of Steve's articles. So his follow-up on his previous wrote an article middle of August after the Genius Act, and Bitcoin has fallen, Ethereum's fallen, all of crypto's down. So, but if you look at the chart, I mean, there's a lot of headroom to the upside. If you look at this, it made this high up here near 5 way back in 2021, struggled to reach that level again, kind of found resistance multiple times at 4, past that for basically all-time highs, not quite touching 5,000, it looks like, but, coming back down, this is just excessive retracement. I don't know. It depends what you look like. It's trying to bounce off that 150 day. It just did, and just regaining the 50. So rejected there at the 50, as it has been a little bit of late. It was rejected quite a bit here at the 50, quite a bit here at the 50, and this volatility is just wacky. It's wacky. Yeah, I'm just trying to be honest. Like, I don't really think I got it wrong at 60, but I like it at 28. I just feel like the sellers are completely exhausted at these levels under 30. And if Ethereum rallies and, crypto starts moving to the upside again, I think the stock will rally, really hard. And if you play like a little call ladder on it, you could make a ton of money. Of course, like, commenter noted, it could crash way back down, fill this gap, it go to 4, go to 0, go to 0 degrees Kelvin. All sorts of things could happen. Anyway, guys, I want to talk about SoFi. I want to talk about SMC. I want to talk about Neo. So I'm going to bail out of this video. But yep, I bought Bitmine Immersion. I don't know. I'm an idiot. I'm a chaser. I'm a donkey. I'm a big fat turd. I'm Stock Karen. I'm Hurricane Lopez. I'm Little Danny Cornbread DeCarlo. I'm MC Al Dente. I am DJ Patchy Drizzle. I'm all of the above. What's up, Bailey B? But thanks. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I have no respect for this channel because it's completely stupid, but I'm glad you could muster some respect. Crypto will not rally. People move money out of precious metals. Man, silver, my God. iShares Silver Trust rallied 9%. You imagine an asset like silver moving 9% one day? I mean, again, I know the underlying probably didn't move that much, but God, silver's gone up just an insane amount the last couple of months. And I have to believe people are going to take profits. And I think when they do, a lot of those same people, like you say, might, you might see money shift back to crypto. Anyway, guys, really appreciate you watching. It is Un Poco Mas, the show where we give you just a little bit more. Peace. I'm out.